This event happened to me when I was around 8 to 10 years old in the garden of the house that I used to live in. I'm telling this story as I remember it without fabricating anything whatsoever. One day, I was playing in my garden. I liked to play with the ball I had or look through the chain link fence which separated our family's property from a river. Now, to explain the situation which occurred, I need to explain the shed we had in the garden. Now, this shed was placed directly at the back of the garden, in the middle of the chain link fence. This meant I could enter the shed from the front, go to the right side of the shed or the left, but not the back, as it was placed in front of the fence. Another important note is that the right wall of the shed had a window that would grant you vision of the inside of the entire shed. One of the things I really enjoyed doing was walking over to the right side of the shed and knocking on the window 3 times, ducking down, then getting up and looking directly at the window. I remember doing this because it was fun for little me. Of course, nothing would ever show itself, and I only did this as a way to roleplay. This day was very different. Although parts of my memory are hazy, I remember the main event with perfect detail. I was watching the river through the fence when I walked to the right side of the shed. I knocked on the window 3 times and ducked down. When I jumped back up and looked through the window, a pale, white, humanoid thing sprouted up and looked at me. I remember it looked me in the eyes, and then it opened its mouth and started moving. It wasn't moving in a way as if it was talking, but it was just moving its lower jaw really fast. It's hard to describe. It was just moving its mouth really quick, and I felt maliciousness coming from this creature. After that, it just ducked back down as quickly as it had come. The situation must have been around 5 seconds long, and I remember just staring at the window dumbfounded, completely shocked at what I saw. Even though remembering this situation now makes me feel really creeped out and scared, 8 to 10-year-old me was more curious and perplexed than scared. So I did what any curious child would have done, and I entered the shed. After all, there was only one way in and out, which was the front door. The only window of the shed could not be opened anyway, so that thing should have been inside. When I walked into the shed, I saw nothing. The shed itself is really small, so there would have been nowhere to hide. I just remember being confused more than anything. So I closed the door and continued playing outside. Looking back at the situation as an adult, I would have absolutely ran away, as the thing was only human-shaped, but definitely not from our world. Also, I get scared easily as well. This situation only happened once to me, and never again. Even though I played the window-knocking ritual dozens of times after the event occurred. I wouldn't be surprised if it was an overactive imagination, and I'm definitely open to that idea. The only problem was that the creature felt so real, and I can't imagine young me conjuring such a creepy thing from my mind. I also thought that maybe it was my reflection being slightly distorted as it rose up at a similar time I did. Only problem with that theory is that the creature ducked down while I was still standing up. If you guys have any theories, suggestions, ideas, or just some questions, then feel free to let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to my story. Over a decade ago, my father bought a piece of land in Palawan, Philippines. It was right next to a black beach. The sand was black. And if you went into the ocean, under the waves, a couple of feet in, was a graveyard that the ocean had taken over. It was eerie, but beautiful. Our land had its own apparition and ghost called the Lady in White. She was a young woman, perhaps in her early to mid-20s, who wore a long white dress, and she would be seen drifting along the land, ocean, or beach. She was seen by countless people, by our family members, random people passing by, the priests, the nuns, kids playing nearby. basically anyone who came by the land at sundown. She was so real at times that people would often mistake her when she was on the beach, far enough away from the road, to be either my grandmother or aunt or myself. My grandmother was murdered on the beach in 2010, and we sold the land to a priest on the island. But I've heard that the lady in white still roams the land. I just wonder what she wants and who she is. Once again, here's another story that was told to me by my ex-husband. And if memories serve me correctly, it happened to his ex-stepmother's stepfather, who I'll call Tom. Try wrapping your brain around that. Anyway, here's the story. Years ago, Tom was working at a job, I can't remember where he would oftentimes work late, so it wasn't unusual for him to be driving home late at night. As you know, highways are littered with mile markers, and Louisiana was no exception. One night, while driving home, he noticed a lady wearing a white dress standing near mile marker 5. I can't remember the exact number, and although he felt bad for the lady, he didn't stop. She was beautiful, with her long, flowing hair, and dress that she was wearing which reminded him of one of those dresses from the 1800s. He continued to drive and noticed that each time he passed a new mile marker, he would see the lady in white standing there. Naturally, this creeped him out, so he stepped on the gas, not once slowing down, so I guess you could say that he put the pedal to the metal. But anyway, just before approaching the next mile marker, though he looked into his rear view mirror and got the shock of his life, because sitting in the back seat was none other than the lady in white, this time with a malicious look on her face that quickly distorted into something hideous. As he was fastly approaching mile marker 8, he began to hear this evil laughter that echoed throughout his car, but tried to ignore it because he was so scared, and kept driving. Apparently, she began to wail like a banshee because he was getting away. Eventually, she vanished from his car, but what was to follow was even scarier. He then saw movement off to his right, and what he saw he would never forget. It was the same lady in white chasing him, but this time, just her disembodied head that was cackling like a witch. The head also seemed to be getting bigger and at times would make its appearance inside his car to scare him even more. Her head began to weave in and out of Tom's car, all the while continuing to pursue him. Or I should say her head continued to pursue him, keeping the same pace as the car. That was until finally they reached mile marker 9, and then she vanished. Needless to say, he didn't hang around long and made it home in record time. And in case you're wondering, Tom continued to take that same highway for 20 or so more years until he retired, but never experienced the lady in white again. Anyway, for some reason when I think about the story, it reminds me of those short stories in Creepshow 2 about the hitchhiker, and I always feel compelled to say to myself, "Thanks for the ride, lady." So when I was 8, I had an encounter with a black-eyed kid. At the time, me and my family lived in Campo Grande, MS, Brazil. We lived in a deserted place with no neighbors, only a few trees around. The house was fully surrounded by walls. No way to enter without being let in. Besides that, we had cameras and a dog, so there's literally no way to not know someone was in the house. At night, I was watching TV in my parents' bedroom because I couldn't sleep. My sister and brother were in their respective rooms. I get thirsty, so I left my parents' bed and went to the kitchen. No lights on because I had no fear until then. So in the way to the kitchen, there's a corridor that leads to all the bedrooms, the TV room, and then the kitchen. When I was going to the TV room, I hear a knocking on the glass. So I turn to my right, and I see in the reflection of our glass cabinet a girl with pitch black eyes a white dress and 2 ponytails behind me in the TV room. I instantly run back to my parents' bedroom and told my parents. They rushed to see if they could find someone, but they couldn't. Me and my parents couldn't sleep through the night, and my brother and sister that were already sleeping had nightmares. Since my parents are really Catholic, the next day they called a priest to bless the house. I never saw the girl again, but I never left my bedroom at night too. At the time, I didn't know about the black-eyed kids legend until only years later. I told one of my friends what I saw because we were talking about strange experiences, and he told me about the black-eyed kids. The strange part is, that spirit was never let in. How was she inside? There was no way someone normal could even sneak past the walls, and even the house. We don't live in the same house anymore, and not even in the same state, but the glass cabinet is still with us. So this story happened about 1.5 years ago now, and I had more experiences since. I was walking out on the street at like 8 p.m., and it had just turned dark outside. So I'd just gotten back to my house, and then everything went dark. I couldn't see anything. Then I could see again, and I was up the street where I was about 30 seconds ago. Only one streetlight was on, and under it was a man standing there. No features visible, but they were wearing a dark shirt, shorts, and a baseball hat. I was terrified, but I gathered all of my courage and walked toward them. Yes, I know I would be the first person to die in a horror movie, but now at this point I was like 3 feet away from them. I said in a quiet, cracking voice, "Hello?" No answer. "Hello? Who are you?" I took my phone out of my pocket. I put the flashlight on. I pointed it at him. The man had a flat face. By this I mean like his eyes, nose, and mouth were completely flat. Like he still had cheekbones, and it looked kind of like it was painted on. I dropped my phone and ran, and then everything went dark again. I was back at my front door, but my phone wasn't in my pocket. I looked around, and I see my phone on the ground in the street, flashlight shining into the air. I went and grabbed it and ran into my house, and I haven't been walking outside past 5 in almost 1.5 years now. Half a year ago, it came back, and it walked up to the window by my door and disappeared into thin air. Now, about a week ago, it came back. It stared at me while I was inside, and then it disappeared again. Has anyone experienced anything like this? I'm only asking this because I'm still confused about this. Hey there, friends. I hope you all enjoyed that collection of some fantastic cryptid stories. Cryptid stories are some of my favorite ones to narrate because, well, they just kind of leave you thinking, don't they? If you did enjoy this video, and you would like more content like this, please consider joining that Nevermore. All you have to do to join said Nevermore is click on that subscribe button and the little bell next to it, then you're part of the Nevermore. Being part of the Nevermore also lets you access things like my Patreon, my Ko-fi, my Twitter, subreddit, and Facebook. You can access all of these without being part of the Nevermore, but it's a hell of a lot more fun if you join. Just saying. Alright, friends, I hope you have a fantastic day and a lovely week. I'll see you on the next video, but until then, sleep well.